And they think, I want my own location. They walk out the door. They put their middle finger up at the owner and say, I'm walking out. I'm going on my own. You just watch me. You just watch me, bruh.
Jack, do you want to know what's better than opening a fitness studio for a lot of money?
Go for it, mate.
Opening a fitness studio for not a lot of money.
You just inverted it.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How you can open a fitness studio for less than £10,000. And I say £10,000 because that was like a round number that we chose. But I think you can actually do it for very, very cheap. And we're going to talk about some of the different ways that you can do it in this podcast.
Yeah, I agree. This has come about because we get a lot of emails and messages from personal trainers saying, this is my next step. I really want my own location. But I'm not ready yet. And it's always, I'm financially not ready yet. And we disagree. And we're going to prove it in the next 30 minutes.
We are indeed. And I think one of the common themes that we're going to talk about, especially if you're an existing personal trainer on the gym floor, my assumption is that you already have clients that you can potentially move into a new location. So we're going to use a lot of that capital that you're already generating from those clients and transition it into a new space and think strategically as well about some of the relationships that you can leverage as well. So you don't always need to just go into a completely brand new space, pay a lease, and be done. There's lots of different paths that you can take.
Full disclosure, I feel a little bit hypocritical here because location one cost about 35, 36, something like that, K, to start up. Location 2 was about 42. But we have coached a lot of guys who have done it for less than 10. So we can talk to this, even though we haven't necessarily lived it. But if we wanted to live it, we could easily by following these steps.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest expenses that we've made is hiring coaches as well.
Yep.
Which is something that, especially if you're starting out and you love coaching on the gym floor, you don't necessarily need to go down that path. You can do a lot of the sessions yourself. In fact, I recommend taking at least 30% of those sessions at the beginning just to kind of get everything all in motion. So there's definitely savings that you can make there. So I'm excited to get into this and give ourselves a little bit of a challenge in how you can actually do it for not a lot of money, or under 10K in this case.
Yeah, okay. Let's go into the mistakes first of all, should we, Jake?
Yeah.
So mistake one, and this is the big one we see personal trainers make. Let's say they're personal training at a local leisure centre or a pure gym or a corporate, wherever they're personal trainer. They're paying £500-600 a month, which seems to be the going rent for PTs right now, by the way, which is mental. Right?
Yeah, that's another podcast episode.
Yeah.
I think.
And they think, I want my own location. They walk out the door. They put their middle finger up at the owner and say, I'm walking out. I'm going on my own. You just watch me. You just watch me, bruh. And they walk out and they launch their own location.
But they do it for the wrong reasons, right?
They do. It's an ego play, Jake.
Yeah.
So they walk out, they ego play, they launch their own studio, they open up sessions from day one and invite people to come and join their studio. And what happens is they end up basically personal training like they were doing before, just with the £500 looking more like $4,000.
Yeah, it's like when you're paying rent on the gym floor at a local leisure centre, you don't need to pay things like business rates and all that boring stuff, do you?
Coaches that you can't necessarily afford, heating, electric, equipment costs, lease, rent, all that kind of stuff.
Repairing equipment.
Yeah. It all costs a fortune, and you need to be thoughtful before you start jumping into those opportunities, or especially as you see them as opportunities.
Yeah, your name on the wall shouldn't be the reason you go somewhere else, right? Like, you should actually want to build a business that is bigger than you, and have a plan to do so. It's not just a case of being like, F you, leisure centre owner, I'm going to go and do my own thing, and you'll see.
The poor old leisure centre owners just get destroyed.
It's like, it just doesn't work like that. You need to be way more prepared and actually make sure you're doing this for the right reasons.
Yeah, and you know, it's also having this is why I think business loans are a good thing, by the way, just to kind of go off tangent, because startup loans and business loans, like banks and other people that are financing deals, they make you provide P&Ls.
Yeah, that's true.
Business plans, projections, forecasts. They make you provide that stuff. And a lot of the people who are, trying to jump on a loan don't actually have those things in place, and they wouldn't have done them if they weren't asked to do them. So I think it's quite a good thing because it makes the owner and operator be a bit more thoughtful.
It's also accountability as well, right?
Yeah.
Like if you've got that kind of repayment that you need to do every single month, then likelihood is you're going to work hard.
Well, it's projected and fixed most of the time, so you can build it in quite easy.
Yeah.
So that's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is eyes bigger than your belly.
You got a story here, haven't you?
I've made this mistake. So my first location, I was a bit wet behind the ears, I guess you could
What
say.
does that saying even mean?
I think it means a bit naive.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Hadn't really grown up yet. Ready to make some big mistakes, Jake. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So we jumped into a location which was it's about 5,000, 6,000 square foot. Far too big, really, for what I needed. But I thought I'm going to take on the world, right?
And actually, were you that guy wanting to put your middle finger up to the leisure centre?
Yeah, I was. If you're listening, Leisure Centre, you know which one you are. And I was the guy who walked out middle finger up. And jumped into this big thing. And I got in there after spending... So I actually bought an existing business, which was quite a lot of money. And then I paid money on top for a big refurb and to make it better. And after that, I was like, damn, I need to get members here. I need to get members to this thing. So that was a big example of my eyes being a lot bigger than my belly. Luckily, it worked out because we backed ourselves, hired some good people, and now it runs really, really well. But that is a big mistake that people make. It doesn't always work out.
Yeah, and I think just because like you want to be that really cool, London gym in your own hometown, like you're looking again. It's like the same with everything. Like social media, you're looking at the where they are now, not necessarily where they were when you started. So you need to make sure that you have that context because you can waste a lot of money just trying to be a really cool gym when you don't necessarily have the money at the beginning.
And a lot of those gyms have financing, right? So not necessarily in the same starting position as you were.
No.
Mistake number 3, waiting until launch day to start promoting. Jake, take it away.
Yeah. I mean, we always used to say to each other, didn't we? Like when we launched this location, the amount of times we said to each other, we only get one chance to do this. There's only one chance to launch. Let's make this count.
One shot.
Yeah.
As Eminem said.
I think like studio owners don't necessarily understand the power of launching and actually how much leverage you have when you launch. Because, I mean, especially if you're in a very small location like we are, it's the talk of the town, isn't it? It's like a new business coming to town. Whether it's a fitness studio or a coffee shop, like everybody's going to be talking about it. So if everybody's talking about it in those first kind of 3 months whilst you get everything all ready and set up, then why not leverage that and actually build a proper launch campaign? Because what you can do, and we've talked about this many times, and this is obviously what we specialize in, is like you can pre-sell all of those customers and actually use that revenue to then cash flow a lot of the prep and the build out of the actual studio. So again, this comes back to the title of this episode of how you can do it, on a budget, is that you can actually use the advantage you have, which is being new, to pre-sell and collect cash up front to then refinance all of the other stuff that you have in place. So you don't have to use existing capital to do that.
Yeah, one of our coaches reached out a few days ago, actually. Because of the cash he's taken up front in his launch campaign, he's managed to hire 2 coaches already.
Yeah, which he wouldn't have been able to do. And again, like you're going to be on a back foot, you're going to be playing catch up. If you're waiting until day 1, which is the studio opening, then you've just missed out on a lot of dead time. And there'll be studio owners listening to this probably right now being like, I did that. We've had so many reach out to us.
I had a call this morning with a great dude in Northern Ireland. And I said, what's the plan? He said, well, I'm going to take 100% of sessions in like the first year or so. And I said, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. And we went through exactly what he needs to do to not do that. It's huge burnout. You end up resenting the business, the people, and it makes for a really tough transition out as well, which we've seen. Anyway, that's another pod.
And just another thing on that as well. Like when what are we now, like 6 to 9 months into revamp on the high street?
Yep.
And what we have to do now, like cost per acquisition goes up. So what we have to do now is basically reinvent this 6-week challenge in multiple different ways to appeal to loads of different personas and, throw in different angles and things like that, add context when it comes to the seasons. It could be a summer challenge, it could be a back to school challenge, all of those different things. But at the beginning, you don't need to do any of that. You can just say, this is our introductory 6-week challenge.
Mm-hmm.
We're new. We've got loads of people wanting to join this thing because obviously you got the early adopters, the late adopters, everybody queuing up. Here's what we're doing. We only have a limited number of spots. Who wants in? And at that point, everybody's so warm. And, the sophistication of the market isn't to a point where everybody's talking to each other about it and giving their own stance on what revamp is. People just want to be a part of it. So again, you've got that advantage at the beginning. And when it comes to actually the cost per acquisition, which is the metric that we always go on, no matter what, we'll look back at our spreadsheets from back in, October when we launched, and it's zero, because we just built up such a waiting list of people wanting to buy and wanting to join that we were actually able to acquire those first big lump sum of members for nothing.
Yeah.
And a lot of those became monthly members. So
yeah, I'd say 70% of those are still here.
Yeah. So the lifetime value of your clients, especially at the beginning, if you can really make a lot of noise when you're launching, just means that you've given yourselves 1-2 years head start.
Don't waste the opportunity. Definitely. So let's go on to opportunities. Number one is finding a small space. Revamp on the high street, as Jake said, sounds like that could be a TV program. It's 900 square foot. That's what we are here, which is pretty small, I would say. But I was with a studio owner day before yesterday, and he's opening up 400 square foot.
Wow.
Which is half what we have here. He could easily do 1 to 4, 1 to 6 in that location. Easy.
Well, we only really use one of the rooms at a time here, don't we?
Yeah, 1 to 6 here, and we only use one. So that's why 1 to 6 is spot on for him. That works really nicely. We know other guys with, between 4 and 9. We don't know too many. Well, think about one of our guys in Exeter. He had, at the start, he was around 300-400.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can make a great business in a very small space. Like the Exeter owner I'm talking about, he had 400 square foot studio in one of those storage units almost, and he was doing 12K a month at that time in revenue. So just goes to show you don't need a big space to create a great business. So opportunity 2, you get to cash flow the entire build up, and this kind of leads on from what you were talking about, the launch campaign.
Yeah.
So if you can have a really successful launch, we obviously launch our studios over 3 months. That means you can cash flow for not just the first month, the second month, but month 3 and 4 as well, without needing any more external business. So that gives you so let's just give you an example here. Let's talk about Revamp, right? Because we did this not long ago. So we got about 60 gateway offers in, didn't we? So 60 paying $299, which is off the top of my head around 15K, something like that in revenue, plus a bit more. So that cash flowed our rent for the first 6 months here, right? That cash flowed coaches from day one, taking 39 sessions a week, so 4K a month. And that also cash flowed our own distribution for the first 3 months. So that goes to show how powerful it is. And then what happens was those guys signed up to 6 weeks from day one. So we had 6 weeks with no cash coming in because they'd already paid. We couldn't have any more because we're still experimenting with capacity here. So at the end of the 6 weeks, we recommitted, I think it was around 70 to 80% of those gateway offers onto recurring memberships. And then we knew way more about our capacity as well. So from October, we didn't get any more cash flow until end of November. But because we stacked so much up front, it meant we could have that without stressing at all in the business. That is why it's so powerful. And we didn't need to be in fulfillment from day one. So that just gives you a little example of what can be done. And then you just rinse and repeat that.
Yeah. So the great thing about a small space, and something that we're starting to obviously recognize more and more, is that it's repeatable, right? If you can find a small space, build it to capacity, which is relatively easy to do, which is what we've done in the last 6 months, you can then take that formula and repeat it in multiple other places, right? So it just gives you the great foundations to build a business which is bigger than you, hiring coaches, actually start to spread out and scale. And, and it didn't necessarily start with a lot of capital at the beginning because of the process that we followed. So just moving on, if I was a personal trainer and I'm looking to open up my own fitness studio and I don't have a huge budget, but I have existing clients, what would be the order that you would follow in terms of like moving away from paying rent on the gym floor, like we mentioned, to actually owning a studio and becoming a fitpreneur?
Hey, quick one from us. If you're enjoying this episode, you'll love our free weekly newsletter.
It's for current and aspiring studio owners who are looking for the latest growth hacks to sign up more members and keep them.
It's a quick 2-minute email covering the stuff we're testing in our own gyms.
So you'll be getting access to what's working today.
If you're interested, you can join 3,500 gym owners and go to thefitpreneur.com and subscribe.
That's thefitpreneur.com. Anyway, back to the episode. I think first of all, it depends on how much money you have, right? So you might have an initial payment of 2, you might have an initial payment of 5K. Whatever you have to your name, most people have that, especially if they've been personal training for a while. So you're going to have that. But even if you have nothing, let's just go on the assumption that, this trainer is coming into a studio, they want their own location, they don't actually have anything under their belt at all. I would start with a small business loan personally, right? So if they can grab a small business loan, between 6 and 10K, something like that would be enough. You also have the advantage of like the payment terms on those loans, which are really, really good. I would just have that in the bank if they wanted to, just to buy some equipment and get moving. So let's go through the steps that I would take. I would get that loan, okay, for not a lot. And then I'd look to rent a very, very small space. Something between 500 and 1,000 square foot would be perfect. I would make sure there's enough market and existing custom in that area.
I'd also choose somewhere local to you as well, just
Yes.
so you don't have to do all of that research and finding out, what kind of, how to appeal to that market when you don't know who it is. So I'd try and find somewhere local to you that you can already use existing relationships to build a buzz around.
Yeah, choose an area already. Try and make sure, like, obviously price per square foot changes from location to location, but try and make sure the payment is between £500 and £1,000, something like that, £500 and £1,000 per month in rent, just so we are not over leveraging ourselves with cost. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is I would plan a 3-month launch timeline. Okay, a 3-month launch campaign. So once you find location, you'll obviously go through heads of terms. You'll go through the lease, and then what I would try and do is negotiate a rent-free period for as long as possible in the first few months. Right? Normally, landlords with new tenants can be quite good with that stuff. They obviously want to be paid ASAP, but they'd rather have their studio rented out, their location rented out. So I would be happy with signing quite a long lease with decent break terms under the deal that I actually have, 3 to 6 months if you can of rent-free period at the start of your tenancy, and let the landlord negotiate you back if you need to. But like I would always 2+ is great.
Yeah, the longer you
Months.
can go without having to pay that rent, the better.
And it also allows you to build a launch campaign properly and open up with a bang with loads of customers and cash. So that's what I would do. So obviously step 2 is plan a 3-month launch campaign. Now we actually have one, don't we, Jake?
Yep.
We're giving that bad boy
We'll
away.
include the link below in the description. So this is the whole 3-month timeline that we followed ourselves. So we've just basically put it all together in a nice A3 document that you can either print out or have a look at. But yeah, I'll include the link below in the comments.
Yeah, and if you want help executing on it, obviously let us know and we can help you there. Step 3 is to move current clients and pre-sell for new ones. So we've done this with a guy in Essex where he went 1-to-1. He was 1-to-1 with clients, moved them all over to the location, and is now working in a small group with them.
Which is an advantage, again, that we didn't have. Like, you've got an existing client base who love you and, perhaps are working 1-to-1 with you. Then you've already got that monthly recurring revenue there to build upon. And those will also become advocates of your new fitness studio as well. And the great thing about them people as well, they trust you enough to know that if they're walking into an unfinished space, then they won't necessarily care. If anything, them coming back every week to see the progress you're making, like, again, it's another way to build that excitement.
And also, one other thing about moving 1-to-1 clients into a small group product, is that normally they get more value for what they pay.
Mm.
So let's just say they're paying £250 for 2 sessions a week with you, right? On average, they can now pay £240 or £250, whatever it is, for 3 sessions a week with you, right? In a small group setting. And they don't know how impactful and awesome that small group setting is yet. So when people push back against, I'm not going to have you one-to-one now, we're going to be in like a small group, like always go with the test method. Like, hey,
this could be another episode.
This could. We have copy for this, but it's like, let's just test it for a month. And if you love it, we'll carry on. If you don't love it, we'll look at options to take you back into one-to-one.
Yeah.
But I guarantee those members, like we have had so much feedback of people who have had one-to-one in the past and have now moved on to small group, and there's no comparison.
No. And also, like, you got to remember, if you offer people an out and they're 1 month into having an extra session a week, like, they're not going to say, no, I want 2 sessions instead of 3 now, because they're basically just saying, well, I want a lesser product now than I've got currently for the same money.
Yeah. So what people tend to do is break down the price per session.
Yeah.
Right. That's what humans do. So if they're doing, $250, if they're doing 2 sessions for $250, and now they're doing 3 sessions for $250, they'll just break it down into a
and the only variable that changes is that then perhaps with 3-4 other people that they can become friends with.
It's a win-win. They move into a better, more impactful service with more volume, and you get them onto the production line you want them.
So in terms of like when you move those current clients over, obviously you mentioned a rent-free period there. So like if you're able to sign that lease, have 3 months, for example, where you then build out this launch timeline, at what point during that 3 months would you move all of those clients over, bearing in mind that obviously you need to generate that cash flow that we mentioned to help build out a lot of that studio?
Well, the beauty is with the rent-free period. That's why if you can get one, great. If not, it's not the end of the world, but if you can get one, great. You'll be taking payments for your new product in month 2 of the launch campaign.
And if you need to give notice to your current gym, then at what point, because you could probably, if you have to give notice to your current gym upon obviously signing a lease for your own location, then that's an expense that won't be there either.
Well, right? It works out perfect timing, right? Most gyms are a month. I don't know any gyms are longer than that. Maybe if you're at David Lloyd or something, I don't really know. But most gyms are a month notice. So you can give your month's notice at the beginning of the month 3 for the launch timeline. So you can then hit consults and take all of your one-to-ones into the studio. Now, I would still keep those guys at one-to-one until you have your first sessions in a small group at launch.
Yeah.
Right? But let them know the date of moving to small group is X.
Yeah.
Because you'll know that by that point. So that's really simple. And again, the launch timeline that we have, guys, linked below, actually details this out. And any questions, obviously, we're here for you.
Amazing.
But it works out perfect timing because month 1 of the launch campaign and month 2 is like prime warming the market up, building a waiting list, right? And then at the end of month 2, at the start of month 3, you can hand in your notice to wherever you're at the gym, take your one-to-ones in the studio, and for the 3rd month of the launch campaign, you can have your one-to-ones in the studio whilst you build out the studio, right? And take your sales consults for that whole 3rd month. So it's an absolute win.
This is why, hopefully, if you're listening right now, this is why it's so important to give yourself time before you launch your gym. So again, we're not just signing a lease and then somebody messaged me the other day. It's like, I'm thinking about launching my own gym. I've just signed the lease. I said, oh, well, you're obviously not thinking about it anymore. You just signed the lease. So that's good. And it's like, so I was like, when are you planning on opening? It's like, oh, in a couple of weeks. I was like, what?
Wild.
Again, if you're not building enough time to create that buzz and build that anticipation, then you're leaving so much money on the table.
I would rather pay the rent with no one in it to launch a successful launch campaign.
100%. Definitely.
A small step back to take multiple forward.
Yeah.
And instead you're taking a step forward to soon take loads back.
It is like a military operation. I mean, we sat the other day, didn't we? We booked out a meeting space for like 2 hours and a whiteboard pen. And we were like, right, let's put all of this down and let's figure out the exact path that people need to take in order to launch their gym within 3 months. And we did exactly that. And we just followed our entire process that we put into place and packaged it into something which is like, holy shit, yeah, this is it. This is what studio owners need to follow and need to implement if they want any chance of actually, opening up a successful gym in that first 6 months and filling its capacity.
And just a point around budgeting as well. The launch campaign means that you can build a waiting list and amount of sales consults early doors without paying for ads.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got 10, 20, 30K, it doesn't matter because you can do this organically with a good launch campaign. And if you think just a couple of budget saving options that I haven't actually mentioned, you don't need new kit, right? You don't need new equipment.
Somebody would have told you that,
mate,
10 years ago.
I probably still would have bought it because I was going off ego, remember?
Yeah.
And my eyes were bigger than my belly. You don't need new equipment. The market doesn't care. They don't know what mirror fit is compared to black box unless they're a very, very, very experienced gym goer, which most people that do small group are not. You don't need expensive flooring. You can just get good black flooring for pretty cheap. You can interest-free finance most equipment anyway. So if you're not going to get second-hand kit with some of the cash you have, get interest-free finance and just build it into your P&L projection. Pretty simple, right? And doesn't cost you any interest. Great. Like all of these options, like we got £8,000 scales. You don't need £8,000 scales. You can just get a couple of £100 scales quite easily. They'll do a really good job.
Or even just do a movement analysis instead of a body comp.
Yeah. I would definitely still invest in the scales.
Yeah.
But like a couple of £100, not $8,000.
Yeah.
Like you can do this. One day, I think we should do an experiment where we try and open a studio for less than $5,000.
Well, I was going to go one further and say, see if we can do it for zero. And actually try and build out a plan to cash flow a lot of it. Yeah. Because I think you can. Like it's a variable of time. Like if you can give yourself enough time to pre-sell, and if you can sell something effectively, then you can generate what's required in order to.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got the leverage of having multiple locations. Like we could easily sit here right now and generate members for another location. So we could actually hold meetings here and generate sales for another location because people can still see what this place is and can assume what the new place will be. So I think if you've got a space to sell and if you can create a vision for your members and and give people incentives as well to sign up early, I think you can generate a lot of this before you have to make your first payment on anything.
I also think that I talked about having 5 to 10K in like a small business loan at the start. That's mainly to cover costs that are non-negotiable. So like the deposit for the lease, for example, like a landlord is going to want, anywhere between 1 to 6 months up front for the deposit. Like there's no way of negotiating that. Well, there is, but rarely. And things like that have to be paid. Workers that are doing a refurb, if you can't do it yourself, that kind of thing. Like we got a floorer in to lay all the flooring because we were busy.
But also like thinking outside the box as well. Like this is something we haven't necessarily mentioned in this episode, but like you don't always need to go to existing units for let, like on Rightmove or whatever. You can actually look and be a little bit more resourceful. And this happened to us where before this location, you had a friend who owns a freight company.
Yeah.
And he had a gym for his staff within his office block, and the staff weren't necessarily using it. So we just approached him and we're like, look, can we come and do what we want to do here? We'll give all your staff free memberships so they actually get access to coaches, and we can start bringing more people into the studio as well. And the only thing that kind of stopped him from wanting to do that was just car park space.
Yeah.
But again, there'll be another business owner out there or farm owner or something who's got underutilized buildings or space that they want to be utilized. So it's just a case of being resourceful.
Think like golf clubs.
Yeah, we said this clubs. The other day, didn't we?
Yeah. Who have, multiple function rooms
that
aren't really used, that they'll take £500 to £1,000 a month to rent out from.
Well, even, we did one of our member events at Clip and Climb, like a climbing center. And they've started to do evening kind of climbing fitness sessions, haven't they?
Yeah.
So like finding those types of spaces and adding the small group layer on top. So you don't necessarily have to have a conventional gym product. You can go to, like I said the other day, like children's soft play centers. And because those places aren't open at night, you can just say, look, I'll open this at night. I'm going to do small group sessions in here, utilizing a lot of the space and the soft play and everything.
Yeah.
And create a whole new category. Like that's what you want to do. So I think there's loads of different paths that you can take. You don't always need to take the most conventional path. And I think you can definitely replace capital with creative thinking as well.
Love it.
Cool.
I think that's everything. Guys, again, if you're a personal trainer and you think you're not ready yet, I beg to differ. I think you are, as long as your mentality is ready. So if you have under 10K to invest, if you have under 6K to invest, we still believe you can build a great studio product. So don't wait. Do it now. And Jake, to conclude.
Yeah, so I mean, we cover all of these topics we speak about in the podcast in our weekly newsletter as well. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to that. Link below. Yeah, we'll go like literally everything you're listening to right now. We write it out in a very simple step-by-step practical guide. So jump on that and let us know what you think.
That's the pod.